Okay, well, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining tonight's webinar. My name is Janice Lampa, and I'm the Director of Admissions at Servite High School. Again, I want to just say thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to join us. The title of today's webinar is called Navigating the Switch, Public to Private School Transition. So whether you're considering a private school for the first time or you're already familiar with the Servite community, tonight's webinar is designed to help answer any questions that you might have if your son is currently attending a public school. And so the more you hear about Servite, the more you're going to learn that we are very committed to forming faithful leaders who are prepared to make a positive impact on society. And so our mission is really centered around our brotherhood, our academics, and spiritual growth. And so what does that look like for your son who might be coming here or who is thinking of coming here? You're going to hear from parents, you're going to hear from students, you're going to hear from members of our leadership team about what transitioning to Servite might look like. You're going to learn about the benefits of a private Catholic education, and then also how we guide families through that admissions process. And so lastly, we're going to also have a Q&A session at the very end. So any questions that might come up through our presentation, we ask you that you can type your questions in the chat, and we're going to get them to the very end. And so I want to share with you tonight's agenda. And so you can expect tonight's webinar to last about an hour. And so with that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Marissa Mallory, who will speak on the parent perspective. So Marissa Mallory.
Hello, my name is Marissa Mallory. My son Michael is class of 2026 at Servite. I am actually a public school teacher at San Diego Charter Middle School, and my son came to Servite after attending Bernardo Yorba Middle School in Yorba Linda. Michael's part of the Priory Leadership Program at Servite and is also on the football and golf team, so he definitely stays busy. I have to say that the transition from, excuse me, public school, middle school to Servite went extremely well. Michael quickly met his fellow friars and made friends during the summer before freshman year through his summer school classes, summer football camp, and definitely through formation weekend, which is an amazing experience for the boys. Almost 3 years later, the boys he met this summer are best friends and brothers. The pictures on the screen are actually from this year's fashion show event. I'm one of the committee members of that event, and Michael and some of his friends were hosts this year. If you look at the picture of the 4 boys, 3 of the 4 actually came from public schools in neighboring districts to Anaheim. As a mom, it's been amazing to watch the bond these boys have and that they'll take with them after they graduate next year. I would say that academically, Servite is a very strong school. They take care to ensure that your son is placed in classes that meet his needs, while at the same time making sure that he's challenged. The teachers have office hours for students who need additional support, and there's tutoring available. I've had my own students tell me that they have more homework at Servite than they did in middle school, but my son says that's not the case, so please don't tell his Servite teachers. So it probably depends more on your son and kind of their time management skills. Knowing my son, he would never have joined ASB at our local high school. But at Servite, he joined the Priory Leadership Program, which is similar and plays the same role as a traditional high school, public high school's ASB. Our family chose a Catholic education for Michael because as important as academics are, we also want him to have a strong moral compass, and Servite instills that in the boys through formation. Excuse me. Servite's a community not only for your sons, but for your entire family. I would encourage you to embrace the Servite community and get involved in your son's high school experience. This will enrich his experience at Servite and make the Servite community stronger. Honestly, I was worried that I was going to be one of the few moms who worked outside the home and that my son would be the only one dropped off early for school, but I didn't need to worry. It seems like the majority of the parents work and many of the boys get dropped early to accommodate their parents' work schedules. There's always someone outside the gates welcoming the boys to campus, providing us with a sense of relief and security. The parents my husband and I have met these past few years have been amazing. We all help and support each other. If we have to miss an event, there's always someone else there who will text us updates and send us pictures. I want to just close with this. Michael's attending the next Kairos retreat, and during the parent information meeting, Mr. Mascaro said, Servite parents are awesome. They tell their kids they love them. That really struck a chord with me. All of us who send our sons to Servite make a sacrifice, but it's well worth it. And I hope to see you guys all on campus soon. Next, I'd like to introduce Stephanie Early, Vice President of Advancement.
Thank you so much, Marissa. There's my camera, it's coming on, and welcome everybody. It's great to see you. I'm the Vice President of Advancement here at Servite, but before I came to work at Servite about 10 years ago, I was a mom of an 8th grade son looking for the right high school for him. And I also am the mother of a Rosary graduate from the class of 2021. So I had a boy and a girl that attended all boys school and an all girls school. So, but before that, I'm going to give you just a quick personal story. My children actually started in public school, in one of the best public school districts in the state of California. And for the most part, it was a good experience. When they went kindergarten through 3, California still had a program called class size reduction, which guaranteed that the cap of kids in the classes for K to 3 was 20 kids. And so the class sizes were small and we had a good experience. But in 5th grade, my husband and I went in for our parent teacher conference and we realized that our son's teacher didn't really know him. And she knew his name and she knew he had good grades, but she didn't know that he loved baseball or that math was his favorite subject or that he was really kind-hearted and a little bit timid. Because she had 36 kids in the classroom and it was really hard to get to know them all. And what we realized was that she was focusing on the kids on either end of the classroom. The kids in this school district who were hyper academic, very intelligent, and needed extra challenge, or she was focusing on those kids whose standardized test scores were low and who were struggling because she needed to get them brought up in order for the school to get the funding that they needed. And our son, who was kind of quiet, well-behaved, getting good grades, was lost in the middle. And so we made the choice to make our public to private switch in middle school because we wanted our son to be someplace where he was going to be known and where he was going to be challenged to become the best person that he could be. And then that continued on to our high school experience. Here at high school, he went on to play baseball. He was president of the Red Cross Club. Like Marissa's son, he got involved in Priory leadership and was a prior his senior year, which is one of the top 12 leadership positions in the school. And I'm quite confident that in a larger school environment, he wouldn't have had those experiences. Yeah, I often say to parents in the admissions process that we're really lucky to live in an area where we have a lot of great choices, public and private. Private school was what was best for our family, and we're really glad that you've joined us tonight to explore if it might be best for yours. Now, I mentioned class size for my son, and I think intuitively we all feel like our child is going to receive more personal attention in a class of 20 than in a class of 36. And teachers agree with us. In a 2023 survey by the National Education Association, 9 out of 10 teachers said smaller class sizes were their highest priority. Studies have also shown other benefits with smaller classes leading to greater classroom engagement and higher attendance. That doesn't mean that students can't achieve in larger classroom environments, but it does make it harder for them to receive individual attention and support. Studies have also shown that private school students are far less prone to negative experiences like bullying and theft than their public school counterparts. Now, again, it's important to note that doesn't mean it never happens. It does happen, but it occurs with less frequency, mostly due to a higher adult to student ratio in the private school campuses with the smaller class sizes. And in the case of a faith-based school like Servite, also because of the school's culture. One of the key factors in high school success and preparation for college is a student's relationship with their counselor. The American School Counselor Association recommends a ratio of 250 students to every one counselor. The national average in 23 to 2024 school year was 376 to 1, so significantly higher than the recommendation. In the state of California, the average is actually among the highest in the nation. The average student to counselor ratio in the state of California is 464 students to each one counselor. Here at Servite, our ratio is 200 to 1, far below the national average, the California average, and even the recommendation from the American Counselor Association. Why does this matter to you as a future high school parent? It can be the difference between your son getting in to see his counselor on the same day he needs to, which Servite students that we survey say that they can with regularity, versus waiting a week or more to get an appointment to see their counselor at a larger school. A counselor who has a smaller caseload is going to know your child better, can guide him in course selection because of that relationship, can help him pick colleges that are going to be a better fit for him. And of course, they're going to write a better recommendation letter if they actually know him versus only being able to see what's on his transcript. And in a few minutes, you're going to get to hear from some of our extraordinary counseling team firsthand. One of the other differences between public and private school is that in public schools, some of the curriculum and standardized testing are mandated, and that can put a lot of pressure to ensure performance on testing. Private schools, however, do not have the same mandates, and we have a little bit more freedom to design courses that address learning objectives in a more holistic way, rather than teaching specifically to a standardized test. Teachers have a little bit more flexibility and creativity over what and how they teach, and the school can integrate concepts like formation, as Marissa mentioned, throughout the curriculum and even in our after-school activities. One last and really important factor I want to share is that students in smaller private schools, and especially all boys schools, are more likely to try new things and get outside of their comfort zone. There are several reasons for this. An environment that feels safer to experiment without judgment, more trained adults that know the students well and might identify and encourage hidden talents. And last, for a single-sex school like Servite, the opportunity to excel in areas that in a co-ed environment are often dominated by girls. At most co-ed schools these days, girls are more likely to hold leadership positions and receive academic awards because their executive functioning skills develop earlier. I have a boy and a girl. And as just to give you an example, in high school, if you'd opened my daughter's backpack, it was beautiful. It had color coordinated folders with cute little stickers and things were organized. And when you opened my son's, the only way I can describe it is a controlled explosion. I never wanted anything to go into that backpack because I wasn't sure if it was going to be coming out. That didn't mean he was smarter than my daughter, and she actually would say that she thinks he's smarter than she is. However, it's just how the male and female adolescent brains develop. And in a co-ed environment, being able to follow directions, label things correctly, meet deadlines, all things that teenage boys are not great at, often puts girls at an advantage and puts them ahead. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, 51% of girls graduate from high school with a GPA above 3.0, with only 36% of boys. Girls are more likely to take advanced placement classes than boys across all subjects, ranging from 10% higher to take an advanced placement class in math, to 20% higher in a foreign language, to 35% higher to take one in arts. But in all boys school, all the leadership positions are held by boys. Our teachers understand boys and how they learn, so they're going to be more likely to take risks. They're going to be challenged to take AP classes. They're going to put themselves out there in ways that they probably wouldn't in a co-ed environment. One of my favorite examples of this is our annual choir concert. We're an all-boys school, so we have an all-male choir. You go to a choir concert at any one of the co-ed schools, you can probably count the boys on your hand, how many are in the choir, but ours are all men. And every spring, our football players and our baseball players have a sing-off to see who are the better singers. And they're supporting each other and cheering each other, and that's something I don't think would happen in a co-ed school. So those are some of the advantages that we see of private schools, and specifically an all-boys Catholic school like Servite. We're so grateful for your time tonight. And as I mentioned, counseling is a key factor in high school success. So it's my pleasure to introduce our Director of Student Support Services, Mrs. Lisa Barnard, and our freshman counselor, Ms. Elise Floriani. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elise Floriani, and I'm the freshman counselor at Servite. So today I'm just going to share some insights about my role and how we support our students, and then some key differences between the private and public education. So to start, I'd like to give you an overview of kind of what I do as the freshman counselor and kind of my day-to-day base. So one of the biggest aspects of my job is helping students transition from middle school to high school. So I definitely try to do daily check-ins with students to offer that support. And then just connect them with resources that can help them to succeed both academically and personally as well. I also monitor student grades and I collaborate with teachers on a daily basis. So teachers will often reach out to me if a student is falling behind academically, and we work together to find solutions. There's definitely a lot of teamwork involved to ensure students are supported through the year. Another important part of my role is the academic planning part. So from usually September to February, I try to meet with each freshman and their family to discuss academics, grades, future classes, and then I'll quickly introduce the college requirements. And so in terms of academic support on campus, we have a couple of resources. First, we have our Student Success Program. This is a modern study hall during zero period. This program has been pretty successful this year, I'd say, and Lisa Barnard will go into more detail about it during her portion of the presentation. We always encourage students to attend office hours with their teachers to get additional help. And then another resource we have is CSF, which is a student-led tutoring program through the California Scholarship Federation. And this is particularly helpful because students can hear advice and strategies directly from peers who have taken that class that they're struggling in. And now we're actually doing lunch sessions for each subject too, and that's been helping a lot. We have decided to do it once a month, but I think we're going to do it twice a month now. So one of the biggest differences between private and public education, in my opinion, is the class size. So like other people have said, our smaller class sizes make it harder for students to slip through the cracks. So again, with fewer students, teachers can provide more personalized support and then closely monitor students' progress. Smaller class sizes can also create opportunities for students to participate in class discussions. They can ask questions and again, collaborate with their peers, which is also really important. I also think teachers are able to build those stronger relationships with their students because again, less students, the more eyes they have on them. I've definitely found that teachers are proactive in reaching out to me if they do notice that a student is struggling academically or socially. So like I said, there's a lot of communication and collaboration throughout the year. And then from a counseling perspective, I'm glad Mrs. Early brought this up and talked a little bit about statistics, but I also see a big difference in my caseload. So at Servite, I have around 210 students on my caseload, whereas the public high school, they usually have around, I guess, the 350 to 500 students. So again, having a smaller caseload allows me to to get to know my students personally. I build that trust, I build that rapport, and again, provide that individualized support. And I think as of right now, I've finished around 160 academic meetings with freshmen and their parents. So again, not only am I meeting the students, but I'm making that relationship with the parents as well, which is important. So 2 questions that I usually get, which are my most common questions, is what does a typical freshman schedule look like? And then how much homework should students expect? So a typical freshman schedule will consist of English, math, biology, theology, PE, and then language, and then a fine art. So for students who are on that honors track, their schedule is going to look a little bit different. So for example, if they take their fine art requirement during the summer, they often start their history class during freshman year instead. When it comes to homework, the amount really varies depending on the student. So for college prep students, I would estimate about 1 to 1.5 hours of homework per night. But again, this depends on how well students manage their time during the day. So for example, are they using their study periods? Are they using their lunches? Again, it kind of depends on the student. And then the honors for HP, for honors students, the workload is a little bit heavier. So I would estimate around 2 hours to 2.5 hours of homework. And then again, it depends on the student, how well they're managing their time. Are they using their time on the weekends? And yeah, that's really it for my portion of the presentation. So now I'd like to introduce Lisa Barnard, our Director of Support Services, who's going to talk a little bit more about the additional resources we have and offer to help students who need that extra support.
Thank you. I'm really proud of our support program. I think we're really developing a great support system for our students here at Servite. So one of the first things I want to talk about is that I work with students who have learning differences. So if your son is currently receiving accommodations at his public school, maybe he has an IEP, a 504 plan, that's what we would really need to start accommodations for him here at Servite. So one of the first things you can do when you fill out your Servite application, there's a tab that says learning differences. So if you do have a current IEP, 504 plan, or psychoeducational testing, you want to upload that report directly to our application. Once you do that, then I'm able to review the data and I will reach out to families and have the parent and the student come meet with me and we'll review the data. We'll talk about what was working at his previous school and maybe just kind of a background so I can get to know the student a little more. And that will help us develop an accommodation plan to have your son be successful here at Servite. To be considered a current assessment, it must be dated within the last 3 years. So public schools are usually pretty good about keeping those things up to date. But again, if you have questions, please reach out to me and I'm happy to help walk you through how to update and how to get that current. Once we sit down and develop that accommodation plan, then I make sure I communicate with your son's teachers to make sure that the accommodations are being followed. And I also work with the student to do frequent check-ins, especially freshman year, just to make sure that they've onboarded well. And if there are problems, we can kind of help them navigate it and just make sure that they're feeling comfortable here at Servite. One of the important things that you want to make sure that you note is that because we're a college prep school, we will offer accommodations, but not modifications. So typical accommodations would be having your son sit in the first 2 rows of the classroom for priority seating, or extended time on taking tests, or some students test in an alternate environment like the library, just so they have a quiet space on their own table to help them focus. So typically those are the types of accommodations that we offer. And again, if you have questions on specifics, please feel free to reach out to me. And then we also work with not just kids that have those documented learning differences, but any other student. And as Ms. Early mentioned, we are an all-boys school and boys typically struggle with executive function skills. That's normal. So we do work with a lot of students that just need help learning how to study, learning how to plan, how to organize, especially the long-range planning piece. So we have a class that's becoming more and more popular. It's called Academic Achievement, and it's open to all students. The way that class is set up, the first 10 or 15 minutes of the class, we do some type of study skill, some type of executive function skill, and then the rest of the class is a monitored study hall. So students have time to work on homework, study for tests, whatever it is that particular student needs to work on. This class is kept intentionally small, so typically about 12 students per class. And this gives the teacher enough time to get to know your student and also to make sure that they're monitoring their academic progress. So the teacher does a weekly check-in on our student management system just to check for grades, to check for missing assignments, to kind of conference with the student to help them if something's not going well. And then also they are required to communicate with their parents weekly, their counselor, and teachers as needed. And so it's a great way for parents to stay informed and make sure that someone here at Servite is monitoring their son as they try to navigate high school. So I think it's a really great class, especially for freshmen who are being onboarded, and then even too for sophomores, juniors, and seniors who are juggling being a full-time student, being an athlete, being involved in theater or robotics. For some of these students, you know, these extracurriculars almost seem like a second job. So to be able to have that class period, to have some time and to have some individualized attention, I think has really helped our students to be successful. So it's a class I'm really proud of. One other big area of support that we have here to offer at Servite is our library. So in the morning, I think Ms. Floriani mentioned that we do have a study hall that's monitored by a teacher. So students can arrive at early as 7 a.m. and just kind of have a quiet space to study, get ready for the day, get organized. There's always a teacher there to greet them and ask if they need help with something, which is great. We also have support staff in the library at lunchtime and after school. So if students do need homework help and they have practice after school or a game and they know they're not going to get home till late, they're welcome to come in at lunch and get help, and we can provide that for them. So we really do try to offer morning, after school, and even help at lunch depending on each student's schedule. And, you know, one of the things I think we've done a great job talking about in this presentation is just we're a small school. So we will get to know your son and we will get to know his needs. And the other thing that we really enjoy here at Servite is partnering with our parents. So if your son enrolls here and you see something at home that is of concern, we welcome you to reach out to our support staff, to our counseling department, to anybody here at Servite, and we will find the right person to make sure to help your son. So that's one thing I'm really grateful for. I'm also a parent of a Servite student, and I have a couple more on the way. So I'm really proud of the program that we have and all that we can offer for our young sons. And now I'd like to turn things over to Mrs. Ashley Pedroza.
Great, thank you. And I'm super honored to be here. A little bit about me before I get started. I have been the proud principal at Santiago Charter Middle School for the last 10 years. Prior to that was a public school high school teacher, as well as a district office administrator. And so being a previous public high school teacher, I can attest to some of the counseling ratios that were mentioned previously in some of the conversations of being upwards of 400 plus. I'm listening to this presentation as both an administrator at the public school, but also as a prospective parent, although my child is very young. And I'm wondering, throughout this time, what would be important to me and how does this experience that Servite offers different from another school? And I'm learning a lot about Servite in the process, which has been really awesome. And so I want to start by just thanking the Servite staff and team that's on here. This picture that you're seeing on your screen tells a pretty awesome and remarkable story. And throughout our time in education, we have those moments that we'll remember forever. You meet your first kid that you're teaching middle school or elementary school, and your first college acceptance comes back, and they come back and tell you how great you were 10 years later. This picture that's on this screen kind of represents that kind of a moment for me. So I'll give you a little insight. And you can see in the middle, both Miss Mallory and I were at the same school, and we came dressed the same to promote a program that we are launching here at our school. And so we actually were invited by Principal Windish to connect with Servite to help to articulate some of the classes. We have a large number of students at Santiago Charter Middle School that do end up attending Servite. And so we were invited just to have an office meeting was what we thought we were going into. And we got there and we had our office meeting. And then Miss Windich took us to this room. And within about 5 minutes of walking into this room walks this entire group of our former Santanas, or our former students. And it was hugs and tears and all the things. And I say this, and I'm looking at these young men who literally were with me a year or two ago. And that's one of those moments in education. What I think that this picture represents for me is it represents the importance of culture and the importance of continuity in relationships. All of these students were with me for only 2 years, but all those relationships were built. And every single one of them came when invited to see us again, which goes to show that they have the relationship with the people at Servite, as well as Servite's importance in continuing the past relationships that the students have had while they're in high school. What's important, I get asked every day, especially now because it's kind of the transitional period for our 8th graders. And our school has probably 650 promoting 8th graders. And so we're asked every single day, what do you suggest for high school? Where do I go? What do I do? And so I have a lot of conversations with parents about, if I were in your shoes, here's what would be important to me. And so I want to share that information with you guys today, because I think that's important. You know, yes, the classes matter. You want your student to be able to take rigorous classes. And at the end of the day, most of our schools have similar class offerings. One thing I do want to give a gigantic kudos to Servite in, and I don't know that they know that it's an intentional thing, but you know, it was mentioned earlier that there's the ability to take 7 classes. That's not a common thing. Most of our high schools, our public high schools, students have the ability to take 6 classes. And that may not seem like a big difference, but and potentially a 0+, so maybe 8 classes. Where that comes into play is, you know, 3.5, 4 years down the road, when your student is applying to colleges and they're having to put in the classes that they took, and the ability for them to take more classes than their public school peer, I think is maybe not intentional, but I think that's a really awesome plug that I'm proud of Servite for having that, and I'm not even part of the team. But I think that's a really, that would be something I'm going to be looking for as a parent as I'm looking at a high school. Because at the end of the day, we want our students to have the most opportunities when they get to that college option, you know, the college application process, and having more classes does that. The other thing I would be looking for is the values of the peers that my own kids are going to be hanging around. I look at this picture, and these are some of my absolute favorite students. They are students of high values, high morals, high character. They're students that want to come back and say hi to us. When you look at who your students are going to be around as a parent, they're students who are well supported, who are making good decisions. And that, as a parent, from my perspective, that's who I want my own kids hanging around. And when you walk on Servite's campus, and I've only had the opportunity to be on the campus a handful of times, but the culture is probably the biggest thing I look for when I'm on a high school campus. And that's one of the things we really are proud of at our middle school is, you know, when you walk on a campus, and I would encourage parents that are trying to figure out where they're going to land in 6 months, to walk on campuses, tour, attend sessions, educate yourself, because you're going to know where home is, and you're going to know when it feels right. And so I think that piece is kind of the untold, like untangible, like ticket, right? You walk onto the campus, and I can tell you, I've walked onto Servite a couple of times, and it is welcoming. The kids are smiling. It is safe. All of the intangibles that you're looking for in a school. And most of these kids are smiling. I have to get on Jaden for not smiling in this picture, but most of them are smiling. And I think that's really something that I look for. I want my own kids to be around people that are of high character. And I want them to be in an environment where they're really going to thrive. And that's what's important to me as a middle school administrator, a public middle school administrator. And it's when in talking to the team at Servite, that's what's important to them too. And that's really what I think is most important in selecting a high school. But do your research, parents. You know, go out and tour different schools, because you're going to feel when it's right. You just are. And nobody's in this business to, you know, pick up year 1 and then transfer year 2. You want to find a home for 4 years, because that's what's best for our kids. The continuity and the support is best for the kids. So take this decision seriously, and really do your due diligence. You're going to be doing it again in 4 years when they're applying to college, but do your due diligence to feel what the campus feels like. Talk to the people that are a part of the campus. Ask the questions that are important to you, and don't hesitate, because the school that tells you no, which is, I'm sure you're not Servite, but the school that tells you you can't come and visit our school, is not going to be the right school for you. So keep that in mind. The last piece I want to touch on, which I think is important for parents, is in the next 6 months, your student will get what we have deemed the 8th grade senioritis a bit. And they will be done with us in middle school, public middle school, private middle school, I don't care where they're at. They're going to be done with 8th grade. And it's very, very important that they persevere through that itis stage so that they're best prepared for their transition to Servite or whatever high school they end up at. And I can tell you that, Servite does a phenomenal job of offering prep classes for the entrance exam and supporting that process. In order for our students to do well on those exams, they have to have a strong foundational knowledge in the core content areas, which means they can't have itis. They have to persevere. And so over the next 6 months, put the time in to encourage them, and the age of TikTok, the age of phones. My best parent suggestion would be put the screen time monitor on, and they earn time back after they've done all their homework and whatnot. But you're all on here because you're dedicated parents, and Servite's an exceptional place. I have the privilege of walking on a lot of high school campuses, public and private, and I'm consistently impressed. And I look at the boys that are on this slide, and I know there's a couple that can't see it, so maybe these can go out after. But I look at the boys that are on the slide, and they're all smiling and they're thriving, which means a whole lot to me. And they didn't uninvite those that are not thriving. This is my entire group, and every single one of them is successful, and I think that is huge. So tell your student, buckle your seatbelt, finish 8th grade strong. Make sure you prepare as best as you can, because middle school is for exploration, but high school really isn't. High school is a little bit higher stakes when it comes to grades and classes and such. So, get all your exploratory, do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? I want to spend, 2 days in choir and then drop or whatever. Get all that out of your system over the next 6 months. But in your core content area classes, buckle down and build the strongest foundational knowledge base you can, so that when you go to Servite, you are uber prepared to be successful there. So once again, I want to just thank the Servite team. I feel like I know you already, and I don't really, but I appreciate the opportunity to talk. Moving forward, should any of your parents have questions, my knowledge base is very specific to my own school. However, I can probably connect if there's some public school questions that are specific. I'm happy, you can just forward them to me, or I'm happy to stay on. And with that said, I would like to reintroduce Janice Lampa, who is our Servite Director of Admissions. And thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. That was so helpful, even from my perspective, just to hear how public school administrator would support a transition for the current 8th graders. And so thank you so much. I'm excited to share with you what a typical student profile from an admissions perspective of the students that actually excel at Servite. And so like most schools, you hear that we believe every student is unique, but there are shared qualities among those who find the most success here, whether they come from a public school or a private middle school. And so I do have a few bullet points. And so one thing, talking with different administrators at our school that have been here for many years, the ideal Servite student is curious and motivated. And so we hear the term a lot. It's a buzzword now, growth mindset, but it's no different at Servite. And so the students that we see who thrive here have this eagerness to grow academically, spiritually, and personally. And so Servite is not just a school where you go to class and leave. It's a community where students develop these deep connections with other students, with their teachers and their coaches. And so students who truly find success here, they embrace this sense of camaraderie, and they're open to building a lot of meaningful relationships. And so many times when students come from a public school, we just have done I think over 200 family interviews, and that's part of our application process. And one thing that we have discovered that is, if a student is not completely bought in, one of the main reasons that they give is that they're sad to leave their friends. They've made so many friends in their middle school years, and that coming to Servite only maybe one or two, or maybe nobody is coming from their current middle school. And so students who are open-minded about making new friends, students who are willing to get out of their comfort zones, willing to work really hard with maybe a more rigorous academic curriculum, and also stay positive, they tend to have a better experience at Servite. And so to speak about that student experience, I want to turn it over to Jackson Wright, who is a current student. He's class of 2026, to speak on his experience going from a public school to Servite High School. And so with that, I would like to invite Jackson Wright to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Lampa. Hi, everyone. Like Ms. Lampa said, my name is Jackson Wright. I'm a current junior here. I'm part of the Priority Leadership Program, the Student Ambassador Program, and I'm involved in multiple clubs and part of the swim team. And to be completely transparent, I felt like I was forced to come to Servite, but it ended up being the best decision of my life so far. I came from a public school in Fullerton called Ladera Vista, and I had known all my friends there my whole life. So when my parents told me they wanted me to go to a private all-boys school where I didn't know anyone, I was a little upset about it. You know, I begged my parents not to send me here, but fortunately they didn't listen. I ended up coming here only knowing 2 kids, and I wasn't really close to any of them. So transitioning from public to private school can be difficult, and for me it was super difficult in the beginning. But most of the time, not a lot of people switch, so you can feel lonely going into school where you don't know anyone, and the rules are stricter, so you have to make sure you're in proper dress code and proper uniform. But what really made the difference for me was the culture here and the way people support each other. That made all the difference. The teachers here really want you to succeed. So if you're having difficulty in a class, they're more than willing to, be here before school, during school, after school, whatever meets your schedule, because a lot of kids here are athletes, so our schedules are really tight. But it just made it so much less stressful knowing that I had teachers there to support me. But unlike my past teachers that I've had in, elementary school, public elementary school, and public middle school, the teachers here, they really care about me as a person. I feel I can go to multiple teachers and, just talk to them, whether it be school or just about life in general, and have, a meaningful conversation with them. So yeah, the teachers are really here for you. But transitioning back to my story, I did summer school at Servite. It helped me academically because it taught me what high school was like and how a classroom functions, how you're supposed to behave. But it was a lot different from public school because there weren't as many distractions in the classroom, which actually made it a lot easier for me to focus and learn. And then even though I had this great chance to meet people, I didn't take advantage of it. I didn't form any friendships, really, any real meaningful ones, until 2 weeks into the school year when I decided to buy into the experience. What I mean by this is I started applying myself more academically. I started focusing and trying harder in class, and I got out of my comfort zone, which is something my mom had always been telling me to do, get out of your comfort zone. But in where I've been surrounded by my friends my whole life, I didn't really feel that until I was kind of like forced to do that. But, I started applying myself socially. I became more outgoing, started making friends, and formed real relationships with people. And the friends I made here were different from other friends I'd had. I felt like I could talk to my friends about anything, even though I just known them a short time. And these friends, unlike my friends from before that I had known years, the guys I've made here, I feel like I can be friends with for the rest of my life. And so as I overcame this challenge of transitioning from a public school to a private one, I started to form a connection with God, which is something that I've been lacking in my life. And that connection has been the most valuable thing for me about coming here. My faith has inspired me to pursue things I never would have outside of Servite. I'm a lector at my church. I'm a confirmation leader, and which is something I never had before. I never really had a faith life before coming to Servite. So that's been by far the most valuable thing for me. And I've become such a more outgoing person coming here, and I've improved in so many different ways. But now 3 years in, I'm a junior. I can confidently look back at the decision I made, and I can say that Servite was and is by far the best decision I could have made, even though I didn't know it at the time. So just, going from public to private school, it can be very hard, especially when you're stepping into an unfamiliar environment. But Servite has so much to offer and some of the best people I've ever met. So this school really makes the pains of the experience, nothing compared to all the highlights you're going to feel and all the good times. So my advice to all prospective students coming here is to just buy into the experience, and your life will change for the better. So thank you very much. And I would also like to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Corey Fajardo.
Thank you, Jackson. Good evening, everybody. I wanted to talk to you a little bit tonight about the faith formation aspect of the school, as well as the brotherhood aspect of the school. And so I wanted to start a little bit first with just my personal testimony, because I did graduate from Servite High School in 2008, and I'm currently the department chair of theology, and I teach theology here. I've been teaching for the last 8 years here at Servite High School. So I'm going to talk a little bit about both of those aspects, brotherhood and faith formation, from my perspective as a teacher and from my experience as a student. So I went to public school for 8 years before going to Servite High School. And when my parents had announced that I was going to be going to Servite High School, I was fairly nervous about quite a few things. But at the top of my list, I was worried about losing my friends from my old school, and how was I going to make new friends at Servite High School. I was worried about going to a religious school. All of my family, we were Catholic. We weren't practicing our faith like some of the other families were when we first started going to Servite High School. And then I was also worried about the academics, like the transition from a public school to a private school. Currently, the students take a placement test. Back when I was going here, it was called an entrance exam. But needless to say, like when I took that test, and a lot of students take this test, I think it could be a little bit intimidating. So I want to just talk a little bit about that. What I found really quickly was Servite High School makes great opportunities for the students to connect and hang out with each other, both outside of school and during school hours, to just become friends. I found that there were a lot of guys here that didn't have friends from other schools, even coming from other private schools, that their friends went to other schools, or maybe some friends they had in middle school where they were no longer friends with them and they were looking for new friends. So I found that there was a lot of opportunity to make friends here. I think something that Servite High School is doing a lot better than even when I was coming to school here was creating opportunities even before the students come to Servite High School, these touch points for them to get together and meet their incoming freshman class, for them to have time to be with each other. We have the freshman formation weekend where all the freshmen will get together and spend the weekend together before school even starts. They should know each other and really start to work on those friendships. So I would say we do a really good job at kind of getting past that barrier of anxiety of meeting new people and new friends. When it comes to the Catholic faith piece, I can speak both, like I said, as a student, like there was no judgment for the students who weren't Catholic or weren't Christian or didn't have a Catholic background or didn't go to Catholic schools. It seemed like it was an easy transition starting from freshman year to senior year, where it gradually got a little bit more rigorous regarding the material in our theology classes. And I was never forced to participate in anything I didn't want to participate in. I was always encouraged to participate. And that's kind of the model that we still run today in the theology department. And then academically, I would say it was rigorous, and I'm not going to lie about that, but there was so many resources to help with the transition from the public school to the private school that after freshman year, I really kind of got a good footing and just gradually got better sophomore year. And by junior year, I felt more like a private school student academically than my friends who were going to public school. And I would say I ask the seniors every year, kind of what would you say is one of the advantages that you feel going to Servite High School versus your friends who chose not to go to Servite High School? And they always talk about the faith piece, the brotherhood piece, and just the preparedness that they feel going into college. And I would say the same thing. Having graduated from Servite High School and going away to college, I felt so prepared academically. And like I said, it was intimidating up front, but it wasn't like it was this crazy transition from the public to private school move. It was very smooth, and lots of resources from counseling and academic achievement classes and things like that. We offer a lot of resources still to this day. And then I'd also like to talk a little bit about our faith formation program. We use this word formation a lot at Servite High School, and I know it can be intimidating to prospective families or incoming families who have not heard the word formation before. But basically, formation for us at Servite High School kind of works like this. We focus on the students' academic abilities in the classroom, in their academic classes. We focus on the spiritual growth of the student in the theology classes, their physical abilities in the athletics aspect of the school. And then we have what is called our formation program that is kind of the umbrella that holds all of that together to make sure the student is being formed in a well-balanced way. There's not an overemphasis on the athletics and they're lacking in growth in academics or their spiritual growth, or maybe there's a heavy emphasis on academics, but they're not really growing spiritually or in their athletics. So formation is there to make sure that the whole person is being formed, and to be a secondary resource on top of counseling for teachers, for coaches, for students who may be struggling academically or athletically or spiritually. They are assigned a grade level formation director who will be checking in with them and just act as another resource to make sure that we're doing our job as educators to form the whole person and not just one aspect of the person. Also, as far as like spiritual growth and academic growth goes at Servite High School, I've already mentioned we have a lot of really good resources to help them with the transition academically. Spiritually, I'd like to talk a little bit about like the transition for non-Catholic students coming to Servite High School. I think one thing that I know question that parents ask all the time is like, how is it going to be in a religion class or a theology class if my son is not Christian or not Catholic? And what I'll say is just like academically, we start them off slowly and we increase the rigor as time goes on. Same thing with the theology classes. We start freshman year, whether the student has been going to Catholic school his whole life or has never doesn't know anything about the Catholic faith. We start as if all students are on equal footing. They don't know anything. And we'll start with just the most basics, introduction to the Bible and an introduction to the Christian faith. And then we'll slowly increase the rigor through sophomore to junior year and junior to senior year, so that they're not just thrown a bunch of Catholic terms and rituals that they have no idea about. They don't understand any of this stuff. So we're really accommodating there. That was something that I felt was accommodating when I was at Servite, and something that we do place a heavy emphasis on. We are very aware that there are students and families coming to Servite High School that are not Catholic or not Christian or not religious at all. And we want their experience to be warm, welcoming, and charitable. We want them to feel loved. We want them to feel like they weren't excluded in any way, and want them to feel like they have an honest and open area for them to ask questions, for searching for the deeper questions, for meaning and for religion and God and things like that, regardless of their faith background coming into Servite High School. Some common questions that I do get is, what is theology? Like, what are the theology classes at Servite High School? Common and other schools, they're typically referred to as religion classes. So you can think of it like that. When the focus is on the Catholic faith and educating all of the students, since we are a Catholic school, on what the Catholic faith is, what the rituals are, what the Catholic Church teaches, what they believe, what they have taught over the centuries. And so that's kind of what those classes are. Parents always want to know, how many religion or theology classes does my son have to take? And the answer is 4 years. So it's a required course for all 4 years that your son will be at Servite High School. And like I said, they start off with just basic introduction to the Bible. Parents want to know, like, okay, so if they have to take it for 4 years, what do those courses look like? So freshman year is introduction to the Bible, Old and New Testament. Sophomore year is an introduction to the sacraments and an introduction to the church. What do we mean by the Catholic Church? What is the history of the church? Junior year gets into topics like Catholic morality and Catholic social teaching. And then we kind of take a more universal approach at the senior level, with just looking at world religions, different faiths and philosophy, and kind of tying it all together. And then just lastly, I just want to mention we have other spiritual growth opportunities on campus, like daily mass, confession for our Catholic students, retreats for both Catholic and non-Catholic students. So we have campus ministry team who's always there to work with the students if they want to grow in their faith or other opportunities to grow in their faith. So we have just a tremendous amount of resources, both when it comes to growing the brotherhood, when it comes to the academics, or when it comes to the spiritual aspect of the school. And so with that, I'd like to pass it off to our Assistant Director of Admissions, Mrs. Grace Masterson.
Hey, good evening. Thank you all so much for joining us. I've been at Servite 18 years, and so and I truly enjoy working with the new families. So the next step I'm here to share with you is on how to apply. So if you haven't already applied, what you would do is you would go to our Servite website, www.servitehs.org, and you'd hover over admissions and then to apply. Once you click on apply, you'll come to another page, which is on your screen there, and you would pick incoming freshmen. you would create a login and password, and you'll create an account and you'll begin the application process for your son. The application takes about 15 to 20 minutes or so. And then once you complete the application and we import the application, you'll be able to see a checklist that looks similar to what's on your screen. It's very self-explanatory with explanations underneath each step. But the biggest part for you would be to going to the middle, you would print the transcript and student records request, and you would give that to your son's school. And many of the schools will just email us directly your son's records. Then you going back just below that, you'll have an English teacher, a math teacher, and there will be an administrator recommendation. So you would add the teachers' names and their emails, and they will get a direct link. Many families like to have their sons go to their teachers and their principal or counselor and say, you know, I'm applying to Servite. Could you please fill out the form when you get it? And they will fill that out, and then the school will send us the records. Going back to the top, I'm sorry, I started there in the middle, but you would upload a headshot of your son, a birth certificate, and then down at the very bottom, you will, if you're interested in financial aid, you would fill out a financial aid application. And we ask our families to complete the financial aid application concurrently with the application, so that when a student is accepted, within 2 to 3 weeks of being accepted, they will know what their financial aid award, if that is in fact what they need. And another step to the process is the students will come in and do a family interview with one or both parents. We usually take about 25 minutes to do the interview with the student first and then the parents. And once you've completed the checklist, you'll get a nice little email that says, congratulations, it's complete. And now you just need to let us go through the process. And usually for early admissions, families applying for early admissions know by Christmas. And our next group of families have until February 7th to complete the checklist so that they can get an acceptance. And then both of our groups, early and regular, all students have to take the high school placement test that Mr. Fajardo mentioned. But at this time, as opposed to when he was entering school, we don't use it for entrance, but we use it more for placement purposes. Our counselors will take a look at their scores and use that to place them in college prep or honors classes or required summer school. But that is the application process. I'm very proud of our team with Mrs. Lampa as well as Ryan Sullivan here at Servite. And we are here for you guys to answer any questions that you may have regarding the application process or any part of it.